I'd like to stress that if you've come here for politics, you've come to the wrong place. This video is not about politics. This video is about my first impressions of India and, well, my impressions in general of life on the streets in India and in China. Although I am qualified to talk about China, having lived here for over 10 years, I'm not as qualified to talk about India because, well, I only visited India for 10 days. I did, however, manage to soak up a lot during those 10 days. So let's start off with my first impressions. My first impressions of India is that, although it's chaotic, it's very colorful and vibrant, very friendly, very diverse, but also very dirty and poor. My first impressions of China when I first arrived was, although it also shares a lot of similarities with India, being chaotic and vibrant, it was a lot more modern, I felt, and lacking in diversity. In other words, people are very much the same, and very, very, very money driven. Instead of being friendly, I find the people more curious in China. First of all, let's talk about some of the differences that a traveler will experience when traveling to India versus China. And I may as well start with the language, since in India almost everybody could understand English and speak a little bit of it, even the taxi drivers or tuk-tuk drivers, etc. And this made a huge difference, and of course is very helpful for anyone coming from an English-speaking country. Whereas here in China, I'd say 99.9% of taxi drivers can't speak English. Most people can't speak English. And if somebody approaches you speaking English, especially in a tourist area, it's probably because they're trying to scam you. The next thing I'm going to talk about is tap water. You cannot drink tap water in either China or India. I've been told it's a bit more extreme in India. In fact, I was warned to not brush my teeth with tap water or take a shower with my mouth open, which seemed a little bit extreme to me. But I'm quite used to the whole having to drink bottled water thing living in China, since if you drink tap water, you will get sick in some or other fashion. Next, internet. Now, surprisingly, internet is very difficult to get in India. Now, I know internet in China is actually very easy to find. You can find free Wi-Fi in almost any coffee shop or even any restaurant. However, it's censored, so it's pretty much useless if you're trying to check your Gmail or go onto YouTube or Facebook or whatever. You wouldn't be able to use those services anyway. But in India, I found it very, very difficult. There was no free Wi-Fi. I had to pay for internet if I wanted to use it. And for instance, at my hotel, I had to get special vouchers every day with special passwords in order to use the internet. So the internet, I found, even in the big airports, was very, very difficult. I had to produce my passport, and I had to get a special code which only lasted for a short amount of time. So access to the internet in India is surprisingly a lot more difficult than it is in China. Now, there's a very interesting habit that most Indian people have, which I had not seen outside of India, and that is a head-shaking thing that they do when they are nodding in agreement. But it's not the nod that we're used to in the West, you know, sort of yes nod. They do a left and right thing. I can't do it. You'll just have to see it. In fact, I probably have a little clip over here of someone doing it. Now, this just means yes. And I was very confused at first, because I tried to order something at a restaurant and I said, I would like 2 fried eggs, and the waiter did this, and I thought he meant no. So I said, okay, how about some chicken or whatever else was on the menu, and he did it again. So I honestly thought that he kept saying no, and I was getting quite frustrated. But I picked up very quickly that this actually means yes or acknowledged. So as you're talking to people, you'll see them shake their head, and this just means they're saying yes or agreeing with you. Right, let's talk about food and drink in India. First of all, religion plays a huge role in the different kinds of food and drinks that you can get. For instance, there are a lot of vegetarian restaurants in India due to the religion. In China, of course, vegetarianism isn't really a thing. It's very rare. So everywhere you go, you'll find meat, and you'll find pork, you'll find beef, you'll find every kind of meat, chicken, whatever, because there's no religious taboos on eating any kind of meat. But in India, you can't eat cows, obviously, and some religions require you to be vegetarian. So you will see a lot of veg only written on restaurants, and I suppose it's actually quite delightful for anyone who is a vegetarian. I was very surprised to find out that the Indian food that I'm accustomed to eating, or was accustomed to eating, back in the West is very different to the Indian food you actually find in India. Right, let's talk about drinking culture in India versus drinking culture in China. Now, first of all, those who've watched my videos before are probably quite aware that drinking is a very big part of Chinese culture. And not only amongst families during big celebrations, but business deals are concluded usually over a lot of drinking, usually drinking hard alcohol like baijiu. And it's rather juvenile, to be honest. There's a lot of trying to prove who can be the strongest by drinking the most, but that is the Chinese drinking culture. Now, unlike in China where religion is non-existent, because, well, it was banned in the past, and although you're allowed to practice religion if you like these days, nobody really does because, of course, all the religion's been lost. India is an incredibly religious place. You walk around in the streets and you'll see people in all sorts of different religious garb, people practicing various different religions. You'll see a Muslim school right next to a Christian church, right next to a Buddhist temple. It's really interesting and I must say quite fascinating to see all the different kinds of religions all working together, or all living together, I should say. Now, due to the fact that religion is an incredibly big and strong part of Indian culture, drinking is very frowned upon, and I suppose most religions actually don't approve of drinking, and so it's very difficult to find a drink. Probably the most interesting part of my trip to India was the adventure that I had trying to find a drink. Now, there were signs posted all over my hotel room saying no alcohol allowed on premises. There were no restaurants that would allow me to drink inside, so I was walking around trying to figure out where a person can find a drink. And I noticed every once in a while sort of an inebriated scoundrel stumbling out or being thrown out of these really dark, dingy-looking little bars. And they were sort of hidden away on back streets. They weren't that easy to see. And I thought to myself, well, that's not really the kind of place I want to go into. It looks fairly dodgy and dangerous. But you know what? I'm having an adventure. I'm in a different country. I can take care of myself. I'm going to go inside and check it out. So,